Blackwood Manor stood in the heart of the sinister forest like a decaying sentinel of dread. The mansion's history was cloaked in darkness, a tale of gruesome secrets and unholy rituals that had plagued the land for centuries. The story began with the enigmatic Blackwood family, rumored to be cursed with a thirst for blood that had spanned generations. It was said that the family had made a pact with a malevolent entity, granting them immortality at a horrifying cost. Their insatiable hunger for blood had turned them into monsters, preying upon the unwitting travelers who ventured too close to the forest. The townsfolk had long lived in fear of the Blackwoods, their lives overshadowed by the gruesome tales of the bloodbaths and the mansion's walls. It was as if the very air around Blackwood Manor carried a sinister whisper, warning all who approached of the horrors that lurked within. As the decades passed, the tales of the bloodbaths became more gruesome, and the Blackwoods' insatiable appetite for human blood grew. The town's once vibrant population began to dwindle, their numbers diminished by the family's relentless thirst for power. But the darkest hour came when the youngest Blackwood, a prodigious vampire named Lucius, sought to expand his dominion. He believed that the blood of the purest souls would grant him unimaginable power, and he hatched a plan to unleash a bloodbath unlike any before. Lucius lured unsuspecting travelers to the mansion, promising them shelter and respite from the harsh wilderness. Once inside, the visitors were welcomed with deceitful warmth, only to find themselves trapped within the mansion's sinister walls. The bloodbath that followed was a massacre of unspeakable proportions. The mansion's chambers ran red with the life essence of the unfortunate victims, their agonized cries echoing through the night. The very walls of Blackwood Manor seemed to absorb the suffering, as if they reveled in the torment. But as the bloodbath reached its crescendo, the mansion itself seemed to awaken. Its ancient stones pulsed with a malevolent energy, and its shadows writhed like living entities. It was as if the very essence of the house had absorbed the blood, granting it a sinister sentience. The townsfolk, aware of the atrocity that was unfolding, banded together to confront the horror of Blackwood Manor. Armed with ancient knowledge and sacred relics, they prepared to face the abomination that had plagued their land for centuries. The final confrontation between the townsfolk and the horrors of Blackwood Manor was a cataclysmic battle of good against evil. The mansion's malevolent sentience fought to protect its unholy inhabitants, and the night was consumed by an unholy storm of blood and darkness. The battle between the townsfolk and the malevolent forces of Blackwood Manor raged on, with neither side willing to yield. The mansion itself seemed to protect the vampires within, its very walls exuding an aura of dread and malevolence. It was as if the house had become a sentient being, determined to maintain the Blackwood legacy of terror. As the townsfolk struggled to breach the mansion's defenses, they discovered that the horrors within had harnessed dark magic to protect themselves. Shadows twisted and coiled around the intruders, ensnaring them in an unyielding grip. Ancient curses and ethereal apparitions emerged from the mansion's depths, adding to the chaos and despair. But the townsfolk were not without their own weapons. They wielded sacred relics passed down through generations, each item infused with the power of light and purity. These artifacts, along with their unwavering determination, served as a counterbalance to the malevolence that had thrived for far too long. In the heart of the battle, Lucius, the youngest and most powerful of the Blackwood clan, emerged as a formidable adversary. His bloodlust knew no bounds, and his vampiric abilities were unmatched. He was determined to defend his unholy legacy and maintain the family's greatness. However, the tide of battle began to shift as the townsfolk, empowered by their determination to rid the land of the cursed family, unearthed ancient incantations and rituals that could weaken the mansion's hold on its malevolent inhabitants. As the townsfolk chanted the sacred verses and wielded their relics with unwavering resolve, the very foundations of Blackwood Manor began to quiver. The walls, once protective barriers, cracked and shattered, releasing a torrent of blood that had been absorbed over centuries. The blood, tainted by the countless horrors that had occurred within the mansion, rose like a dark tide, threatening to consume all in its path. It surged through the house, washing away the vampires and their unholy legacy. Lucius, in his desperation, blood itself turned against him. It wrapped around him like a serpentine coil, its malevolence seeking retribution for the centuries of suffering inflicted by the Blackwood family. In the final, cataclysmic moment of the battle, the mansion's malevolent sentience was overwhelmed, and it crumbled into ruins. The curse that had haunted the land for centuries was shattered, and the night was filled with an eerie silence. The townsfolk stood amidst the ruins of Blackwood Manor, their faces etched with the weight of their harrowing ordeal. The blood-soaked ground was a testament to the horrors that had transpired, and the forest, once shrouded in darkness, now seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. But the battle had taken a toll. Many of the townsfolk had been lost in the conflict, their sacrifices necessary to break the curse. The survivors, though weary and scarred, had achieved the impossible. The curse of the Blackwood family had been shattered, and the land was finally free from the malevolent grip that had plagued it for centuries. The mansion was no more, and the tales of the bloodbaths were fading in history. However, the story does not end there. The true nature of the malevolent force that once controlled Blacwood Manor remains a mystery. As the land begins to heal, new questions arise about the origins of the curse and the darkness that had enveloped the mansion. In the wake of the blood-soaked battle, the survivors of the townsfolk emerged from the ruins of the Blackwood Manor, their faces etched with exhaustion and disbelief. The curse of the Blackwood family had finally been shattered, and the land was free from the malevolent grip that had plagued it for centuries. As the crimson tide of the mansion's malevolent energy receded, the once blighted forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The darkness that had shrouded the land for generations began to lift, revealing the beauty of nature that had long been obscured. The townsfolk, though weary and scarred from the harrowing conflict, felt a sense of triumph and liberation that they had never known before. The sacrifice of their fallen comrades had been necessary to break the curse, and their memory would be honored for generations to come. But as the survivors began the arduous task of rebuilding their lives and their town, new questions began to arise about the origins of the curse and the malevolent force that had controlled Blackwood Manor. The curse had been shattered, but its true nature remained a mystery. The mansion's walls, once infused with darkness, had crumbled into ruins, revealing long-buried secrets and hidden chambers. Among the discoveries were ancient tomes, dark artifacts, and the remnants of arcane rituals that had been performed by the Blackwood family. The townsfolk, determined to unravel the truth, began to piece together the history of the Blackwood family and their unholy pact. They learned of the malevolent entity with whom the family had forged their bloodthirsty alliance, a creature that had been imprisoned within the mansion for centuries. It became clear that the Blackwoods had not acted alone in their quest for power. They had been mere servants of the darker, more ancient evil. The entity that had granted them immortality had used them as vessels for its malevolence, manipulating them into committing acts of unspeakable horror. The townsfolk, now armed with this knowledge, understood that their battle against the Blackwood family had been but one step in a larger, more profound conflict. The true evil, the ancient entity that had been imprisoned within the mansion, was still out there, lurking in the shadows. As they delved deeper into the mysteries of the curse, the townsfolk uncovered a chilling prophecy, one that spoke of the entity's return. The prophecy foretold that the malevolent force, once freed from its prison, would seek to re-establish its dominion over the land, and the bloodshed would continue. The survivors of the battle, along with a new generation of townsfolk, now faced the choice to let the dark entity's prophecy come to fruition or to stand united against the looming threat. They were determined to ensure that the horrors of the past would not be repeated. Their quest to prevent the entity's return would take them on a journey through forgotten realms, dark magic, and ancient texts. They would encounter allies and adversaries, uncover lost artifacts, and confront the very essence of evil itself. The true horror of Blackwood Manor was not in the past, but in the uncertain future that lay ahead. The battle against the malevolent entity was far from over, and the fate of the land hung in the balance. The townsfolk, armed with the knowledge of the malevolent entity imprisoned within Blackwood Manor and the prophecy that foretold its return, realized that their battle was far from over. They understood the urgency of preventing the ancient evil from reclaiming its dominion over the land. United in purpose, the survivors of the battle, along with the new generation of townsfolk, embarked on a quest to thwart the entity's return. Their journey led them through forgotten realms, dark forests, and the very heart of the cursed land. They consulted with sages and seers, delved into ancient texts, and uncovered artifacts of immense power. Their path was fraught with challenges, as the malevolent entity sought to thwart their efforts at every turn. Dark spirits and cursed guardians rose to defend its prison, and the land itself seemed to rebel against their intrusion. Yet, the determination of the townsfolk and their newfound allies was unwavering. They harnessed the power of light, purity, and ancient knowledge to weaken the entity's hold. It became clear that the curse's destruction had not gone unnoticed by the malevolent force, which had grown ever more desperate to return to the world. As they reached the climax of their quest, the townsfolk confronted the entity within the ruins of Blacwood Manor. The ancient evil manifested in a monstrous, shadowy form, its malevolence reaching out to consume all in its path. In a final, cataclysmic battle, the townsfolk used the sacred relics, incantations, and knowledge they had gathered to weaken the entity's defenses. The malevolent force fought back with the last remnants of its dark power, lashing out with tendrils of darkness and unholy energy. As the battle reached its zenith, the entity's form began to dissipate, its malevolence unraveling. It let out a haunting wail, its centuries of torment and thirst for power now unraveling into oblivion. With a brilliant surge of light and energy, the entity was vanquished. Its malevolence was consumed by the very land it had once held in its grip. The curse of Blacwood Manor, along with the entity's dark influence, was shattered forever. The townsfolk, battered and exhausted but victorious, stood amidst the ruins of Blacwood Manor. The mansion, once a place of unspeakable horror, was now a mere shell of its former self. As the first rays of dawn bathed the land, the curse was truly lifted. The forest, once shrouded in darkness, emerged as a place of life and vibrancy. The townsfolk felt a newfound sense of peace, their land free from the horrors that had plagued it for centuries. The memory of the Blackwood family and their cursed legacy would linger in the town's history, a reminder of the darkness that could be conquered by the courage and unity of the townsfolk. The story of the bloodbath at Blacwood Manor was not just one of horrors but also of resilience, knowledge, and the strength of a community united against the forces of evil. The town, once shrouded in dread, had now become a place of hope and renewal.